I was watching the Young Turks the other day, and I'm a bit of a fan of TYT because they're progressive. They sit kind of where I am, I guess, around many issues, and I like generally their personalities. But I don't know. I watch most of it on YouTube if I'm a subscriber. So I've got to know Cenk and so forth pretty well, and I like some of them, don't like others. One of the Jesus Christ, who I be? Hi everyone. I was watching the Young Turks the other day, and came to realise that as much as I like them, they often do things that irritate the crap out of me. And so I like Cenk, I like Anna, I like aspects of the Young Turks, but and they're progressive and they kind of sit where I do, I guess. So, and I just gave this speech just a minute ago while I was doing the intro, not realising I had sent it on. So if you heard it before while I was doing the intro, I do apologise for that. But the issue has been really about how they deal with, or the issue for me was the other day I watched a video in which Cenk has this session now called The Conversation, and he invites people on to hear their views. So he had, so I watched two of those in which he had these conspiracy theorists on to talk about their political views. He had a bloke on that had been banned on every possible social media site you can imagine because he was a dick, and he'd said some things, conspiracy theories that were just not factual, and he'd been banned. He's an arrogant prick, to put it mildly. So self-centered, egocentric, possibly narcissistic, I would imagine. And but Cenk wanted to argue with him, and tell him he was wrong. Cenk starts by saying, "I want to find out what you think, right? Why you think the way that you think," and then he decides to have an argument with this dude, and says, you're lying, you're blah blah. So he calls, and basically calls him names, I guess. Now, I can appreciate that if you're going to have someone on and you want to talk about their thoughts, then you should give them the space to have their thoughts, and you should know from the outset that that's exactly what they're going to do. They're going to talk about their stuff, and no matter what you say, if they're a conspiracy theorist, there's nothing you can say that's going to change their mind. That's it. So the question for me was, why would you be having them on? We know what they think. We know we can't change their thinking, so why bother? Then he had a couple on who were from the Patriot Party. I can't remember what they were, but they're standing in Arkansas, I think, and they believe in a whole host of things around coronavirus and stuff, which are probably pretty unhelpful. But they were quite reasonable. So the two instances was, one guy was just over the top, angry, spouted all these facts that were false, and these other two, which were younger people, they talked quite rationally about what it was that was they talked rationally about their beliefs and how that was. And in the meantime, Cenk's getting angrier and angrier with them, and then even though they said things that I totally disagree with and Cenk disagreed with, that's fine. It was their view. They weren't. Some of their stuff was conspiracy theories about not taking the vaccine and a whole lot of other stuff, but mostly they were reasonable about how that. And it was Cenk that was losing it on the other side. And I couldn't help but think, well, my God, mate, if you want to maintain your credibility, don't get super angry at people just because you have a different belief system than theirs. You invited these people on to hear what it is that they have to say, then give them the space. And the other stupid thing the man does is so with the first guy, I had to talk over him because the guy was just talking all the time and making no sense whatsoever, and he had to talk over him to get some words in. But and then he cut him off at the end, right? And then and this guy had been banned from all these other social media sites. So Cenk knew what he was getting into, but decided to do it. And I think that this is where he becomes very much like them, because they wanted to have their say. He particularly wanted to have his say. It was his network, so he can do whatever he bloody all likes. At the end of the day, he cut this guy off. With the young couple, they were quite rational, sensible in a way. Ideas were a bit skewed, particularly around vaccinations and so forth, but they would have been prepared to have had that conversation with him, except for the fact he got angry. And, as much as I love TYT, the way they produce some of their stuff, and Anna gets angry and does the finger up and a whole lot of other stuff, and they've been having this fight with Jimmy Dore, and, in many ways, they act like children. So I guess they are the Young Turks. And the other thing about the Young Turks is they're all getting older, so they're not so young anymore, particularly Cenk. So that's my thoughts about that. But what I wanted to talk about, though, was this article I came across in the New Daily on conspiracy theorists lack critical thinking skills. I just want to talk about this a bit and probably read most of the article, because one of the issues for me has been how do we combat people. So the first question is, how do we combat people that have got conspiracy theories embedded? And the second question for me is, should we? The Cenk Ugur example is one of those. Should we combat these people, or should we just let them do their thing, because we're probably not going to change their mind. If you're not going to change somebody's mind, then my suggestion always has been, just don't have a conversation with them. Avoid those conversations as much as possible. Pardon me. And if you're going to meet with them, just ask questions. You don't have to listen to what they say, but you can just ask questions about them. So anyway, so there's this article on conspiracy theorists lack critical thinking skills, and I found it interesting because it kind of highlights a few things that I've already known anyway, but it was actually looking at some significant research in this area. And it goes on to say the more people living in conspiracy, the more people believe in conspiracy theories, the worse they perform on critical thinking tests. A new study has found. Now, this is an area that has kind of fascinated me for a long time. Was that if you are a critical thinker, you're less likely to be a conspiracy theorist. Now, I've got a sister and a couple of nephews who are well-educated individuals, and they believe in conspiracy theories. I know of doctors and other professional people that also believe in conspiracy theories. So I don't think it matters about being well-educated, but it does matter as to whether you've been taught to think critically, and that's what this study actually is all about. It's about the critical thinking. So this doesn't mean that conspiracy theorists are necessarily lacking intelligence, and that's certainly not the case, but they lack the skills to objectively analyse and evaluate a situation. I think that goes without question. The good news is that people can be taught these skills and to an extent be brought in from the dark side. But of course it's complicated. And this is the problem, is that it does seem to be complicated to me. Conspiracy theories are nothing new, but they have greater reach and intensity with the advent of social media. How true is all of that? As explained by Anthony Lanshian, an associate professor of psychology at the Paris Nontara University and co-author of the new study, he says conspiracy theories refer to attempts to explain the ultimate cause of an important event, social, political, climate, etc., by accusing a hidden coalition of perceived malicious and powerful people or organisations of having secretly planned and implemented these events. And I think that's a really interesting point, because when you look at the way conspiracy theories are constructed, you will notice that it is always about organisations, powerful people within those organisations, or powerful people, period. Like, Bill Gates gets siphoned out, Obama gets mentioned. Anybody that's in authority, even freaking Morrison sometimes gets mentioned. So even people in authority become the central focus of most conspiracy theories. There is a persistent conspiracy that shady figures in the US government were complicit in events of 9/11, where airlines were flown to the building in the Pentagon and the field in Pennsylvania, and the attacks weren't simply the works of Islamic terrorists. So we know all about that. The QAnon conspiracy theory of global satanic network of pedophiles run by political elites is widespread and powerful. Is so widespread and powerful that it led to the election of the true believer, Republican Marjorie Taylor Greene. If you ever follow American politics and you are aware of Marjorie Taylor Greene, you'll know what a crazy individual she is. But she's that crazy that there's a percentage of the American people who voted for her and elected her into office. And there are more of her ilk that are likely to become members of Parliament as well, or Congress in the US. Then, of course, there's the idea that COVID-19 pandemic was created on purpose by Chinese scientists. Not a big use of the theory that coronavirus accidentally escaped a lab in Wuhan. The French researchers ran 2 studies where they assessed the critical thinking skills of 338 undergraduate students using a French version of that particular test. They then scored the students' tendency towards conspiracy beliefs and their personal assessment of their critical thinking skills. And this is the issue. So they were matching up conspiracy beliefs against their critical thinking skills. So critical thinking is the objective analysis of an evaluation of situation and requires a number of cognitive skills. Now, I don't wish to blow my own trumpet here, but I will often, I don't think I'm necessarily brilliant at analysis, I will admit that to start with, but I do understand that when I hear someone talk, and even though I may not agree with their basic argument, that they may say things that I don't disagree with. You know, like they're having a chat with Cenk the other day about pharmaceutical companies and how much money they make, and that that pharmaceutical companies pay for politicians to advocate for them and their products and that sort of stuff. And I understand all of that. I have an issue myself in relation to the amount of money that's poured into politics, even here in Australia. So I have an issue with pharmaceutical companies, the crap that they push down people's throats, and the harm that they do in a community. So I understand that argument, and I got it, and it was important to agree with that. Cenk agreed with it as well. So an analysis would be, I can accept that, but there's this other part of the argument that I don't accept, because it's just not based on fact. So some of it is based on reality. You know, pharmaceutical companies do pay a lot of money. They do pay it to politicians to get what they want so they can make more money and so on, and research and so forth. So I understand all of that. That's fact. But some of the other stuff that they presented was not factual. So, and you need to, I guess, disseminate between what is factual and simply what isn't. What the researchers found was a strong association between lower critical thinking skills and increased tendency towards believing conspiracy theories. This isn't a new idea. Instead, it persuasively builds on previous research. A series of studies written in 2014 paper concluded that teaching analytical skills can reduce or protect against the adoption of conspiracy theories. Now, the point here too was, when do you start teaching these sorts of analytical skills? And the answer comes in the next paragraph, which is said a 2000 study found that the analytical teaching could be taught successfully to 10-year-old and 12-year-old children. And I guess that's about not just conspiracy theories, but it's about how in your world do you view religion. How do you, in your world, view some political ideas that aren't necessarily based on any of this other stuff that we're talking about, any of the conspiracies and stuff? It's just about how do you evaluate your world and other stuff, and how do you, and some of those, that sort of critical thinking stuff can impact kids in terms of how they see themselves, their parents, other parents, conflict that might exist in their family doesn't exist in other families. So it helps to be able to analyse and decipher what is best for them to have in their particular world. Now, the other part of this test that I thought was interesting was ego and personality tend to resist a change in thinking. So it's wonderful having a cure for dangerous thinking, but how do you get the afflicted to take it up? So a series of experiments in 2016 established a robust association between a need for uniqueness, that is a person, and this when I think of some of these people, I actually think of some of this stuff because I've often believed that also fear is an underlying aspect of conspiracy theorists. So if you're fearful about how your world is developing, you're fearful of people in power, if you feel powerless yourself, hopeless and helpless, then perhaps you might be predisposed to conspiracy theories. And I guess to some extent, maybe this is kind of validated in what they say here. This calls into question, what does it say? In other words, the desire to be seen as unique and special serves as a motivation for conspiracy theorising. This calls into question the nature of crazy belief. It may be a case that for some people, ego trumps everything else. I'm very disappointed they had to find the word Trump, but such is life. It's worth considering this when puzzling the apparently self-destructive behaviour of conspiracy celebrities. So it finishes with this. I didn't know about this, but if you're in a position of power and authority, that is, you have a TV show, you're making heaps of money, why wouldn't you use that to your benefit? So this is the end of the article. Last year, celebrity chef conspiracy theorist Pete Evans was fired by Channel 10 on the day he was to start filming I'm a Celebrity, Get Me Out of Here. He lost his cookbook publisher, millions of dollars in endorsements and future TV appearances for posting neo-Nazi symbol on Instagram. And so he should have been. His Facebook and Instagram accounts have since been shut down because of sharing misinformation about the coronavirus. He's been fined $80,000 by the TGA for allegedly spruiking dodgy wellness. I didn't know they could do that, but apparently they can. As his reach has dwindled, along with his income, Evans has remained unrepentant. You might wonder, what was he thinking? And I think that's the point. That if your ego is so strong, your beliefs are so intense, it doesn't matter what income you're earning or what position you hold in society or how other people view you, you're still going to believe those beliefs. If you're unable to think critically about what's happening in the world, then you are likely to be embedded with conspiracy theories. So I found that very helpful when I was reading through that article, and it helped to explain a lot to me about how conspiracy theorists work. And if you have a conversation with somebody who is a conspiracy theorist and they want to try and convince you, tell them that that's not a conversation that you're going to have with them. You're not interested in talking about that. Let's find something else we can talk about that we can at least agree on. Don't try and convince them. I would suggest if you want to be involved, ask them heaps of questions, but don't try and engage in a conversation with them and argue with them as Cenk did, because it's just damn unhelpful. So thanks everybody for being with me. Take care of yourself, look after yourself, and more importantly, be safe.